Hello, my name is Kevin Stokesbury. I'm going to talk to you about the 2023 Sea Scallop resource about stewardship and finding new recruitment. This is a presentation I gave to our Fishermen Steering Committee here at SMAST on the 6th of February, 2023. So, the situation with our resource right now is that we are at the lowest in our time series since we've been collecting we do a drop camera survey here. And since we've been collecting data, both the total biomass and the exploitable biomass are at the lowest it's been. The New England Fisheries Management Council has sent out the fishing regulations for this year. And there's two access trips in closed area 2, and also about 24 days in the open area. So a reduction from the previous years. Now, we did our drop camera survey on Georges Bank this year, and here's the distribution of sea scallops. You can see there's 4 main aggregations, one up off the Cape, one in the Nantucket Lightship area, the northern edge up in the Habitat HAPC, and then the largest is the southern part of closed area 2. If you break that down into pre-recruits and recruits, so scallops that have just newly settled, and then scallops that will recruit, maybe get to the age of recruitment in the next couple of years, you can see that those patterns kind of exist, and the most of them are in that southern part of closed area 2. Here's the distribution of pre-recruits, so less than 75 millimeter scallops and greater than 75 millimeter scallops on Georges Bank. It's in millions of scallops on the y-axis and over years on the x-axis. So if you break this down, you can see that for the less than 75 millimeters, really there was that huge recruitment in 2000 that showed up in our series in 2014. And that did not grow very fast. So those 3 columns that you see there are all the same year class. Really, in 2022, we've had a good recruitment, so higher than average, but not what you would call an extreme recruitment. On the other hand, for the larger scallops, we are at the lowest rate that we've seen on Georges since 2003. So that's a problem. The reserves that we had in these closed areas are not there anymore. And so the question becomes, how do we preserve this good recruitment? Here's the size frequency of scallops from our drop camera survey on Georges Bank, and about 56% of them are less than 75 millimeters. That means that they need a couple more years to grow. So as far as numbers, the numbers are actually pretty good as far as total number of animals, but in biomass, the biomass is low. So we did a tagging study back in the 2000s, and here's an example kind of what we've got going on. We've got, when we tagged this scallop, it was 53 millimeters, and we got it back a year and a half later, and it had increased up to 109 millimeters. So that's quite a growth. Scallops are growing quite fast at this size. And Georges Bank, of course, is a very productive area. If you look at the von Bertalanffy growth equation here, when that scallop was tagged, it would have been 140 count. So that means that it would have taken 140 scallops to make 1 pound. A year and a half later, when we caught it, it would have increased to a 22 pound. So like most animals, scallops put most of their energy into growth when they're small. And then when they start to become sexually reproductive, they put most of their energy into reproduction. And these scallops are incredibly fecund. They produce a huge amount of eggs, about 5 million eggs every spawn. They spawn for 10 years or more. So there is a lot of potential. And so the first part of the talk was really, how do we preserve those scallops to those small scallops that are on Georges Bank. But the second portion that we also need to consider is, will we have another extreme recruitment, or what's coming down the pike? Basically, scallops, they need to form clumps, on a scale of meters so that they're close enough to each other that they can fertilize their eggs. They also need to be synchronized. The spawning needs to be synchronized, and usually annual mortality is fairly low. Here's the distribution of potential reproductive output on George's Bank from our 2020 paper. And so what this is, we do a quadrat sample, and the quadrat's about 2.3 meters squared. So if you see more than 2 scallops in there, there's a very good chance that at least one of them will be a female and one of them will be a male, and that you'll have a good chance for reproductive output or fertilization. And that's what this distribution shows. So it shows where we think the scallops are producing their zygotes or their larvae. What happens is that occasionally you get a fairly constant recruitment, maybe between 19 and 35% of the population. Some years you get a really good recruitment, like we saw last year, where it was up about 50-60% of the resource in the area. And then you get these extreme recruitments. So we saw that down in the Elephant Trunk area in 2003, up in the Gulf of Maine in 2009, and then that huge recruitment we were just talking about in the Nantucket Lightship area. And it's really, those seem to happen about every 7-8 years. It's about time that we saw another one, and given the type of weather we're having this winter, 2012 was also a very warm winter, and we had that huge recruitment. Perhaps we'll see it again. So we really need to keep our eyes open for it. Because when you look at this graph shows for the whole resource, this shows how much those extreme recruitments make a huge difference. So you have in the open bars the recruitment going along. Then in the hashed bars you have the exploitable biomass, and the solid is what was harvested. So we're usually just harvesting a portion of the exploited, but the recruitment makes a huge difference. You also want to make sure that you're looking at predators. When scallops are small like that, they're very exposed to predation, crab, lobster predation, also fish, but starfish put an extreme amount of pressure on it, can really clean out a resource. So we have been tracking the scallop abundance, or the starfish abundance. And we do see a few areas like the closed area 2 access area in the southeast where there are some higher rates, the closed area 2 extension as well. But they're not so huge that they're out of the norm. So it's something to keep track of, but perhaps not panic about. Then the other situation is that if you have, of course, the fishery is limited by 7 people at sea. If you're working watches and around the clock, that's only 3 or 4, or the most 4 people on the deck. If you have a large number of scallops on the back, and most of them are small, and so you're throwing them back, scallops are not like mussels or oysters. They will die if they're exposed to air for a long time. And also temperature will really kill them. And so this is from the Nantucket, or the Elephant Trunk area, part of Maid that Alan Cass took this photo. And when we were tracking that, when we first started our program, we saw quite a decline in the abundance of scallops between 2003 and 2004. There's still, a lot, and it still drove the resource and helped rebuild it, which is, I think, how these resources rebuild, is from these extreme recruitments. However, there was a loss there, and we thought it was because of discard mortality from the fishery that was also operating there at the same time. That's because the Mid-Atlantic is warm. Scallops die above 22 degrees, and the water temperature at the surface was higher than that, and then the air temperature was much higher. And there was a nice paper by my colleague Dave Rudders down at DIMS that showed that the increased time on deck also increases mortality, and these scallops, they just cannot close like an intertidal animal, and so they would it would dry up and die. So that's one of the problems. We really want to, getting back to the first part of the talk, we want to avoid killing these small scallops. We have this large resource of small ones, and they are occurring in about the same place that the older scallops are. This is some of our video footage from the Habitat HAPC. It shows a very healthy scallop ground that has not been fished for quite a while. So you're going to see some very large old scallops. You can see how they're distributed. It kind of helps hit home what I've been talking about, and that the patterns of the scallops form on the sea floor is important. I think it's important for their fertilization success. But also the thing to take away from it is that if you tow a dredge over this sea floor, it will very, very quickly fill up. So if you tow it for a long period of time, the scallops are going to fill with sand, they're going to get buried, and it's going to kill them. So that's another problem. You don't want to be towing for a great extended period of time in these kind of densities. And the access area that's going to be open is going to be dense like this with a lot of small scallops. I'll just give you another second to take a look at this. If you want to see our sampling technique, the paper that's cited below there by Dave Bethany and I, you can go to that link, and there's actually a video showing how we do our counts and the whole procedure. It's softly, I think it is softly fun to look at. I think there's one more drop here. We'll let it go, and then oh, that's it. Fantastic. So we had our steering committee meeting and talked about it. And what came out with it is that for this coming fishing year, we advise people, if they can, to make short tows so they're not plowing the scallops on the seafloor and burying them. Try to avoid deck loading, because you cannot get those scallops back, the small ones. If you're not keeping the small ones, you can't get them back in the water quick enough. I really want to emphasize that the less time on the deck, the better for these scallops. If you can improve your dredge selectivity using extender links or some other form that increases the size so the small scallops fall out and don't even come up on the deck, that would be a great thing. And to, as much as possible, avoid high grading. I know that's difficult given the price difference between large scallops and small scallops, but if you can harvest most of what you catch, rather than returning them to the seafloor and going over and over it again, because that'll increase the mortality. And it's really imperative that we preserve what we have as far as small scallops, so that you'll have a continuation of the fishery, and also keep an eye out for those extreme recruitments so we can protect those areas and really get the full advantage of the quick growth of those young scallops, because it does make a year or two can make a huge difference. Thank you very much. This is just in support of the letter that we've sent out on behalf of our Fishermen Steering Committee, and you're certainly welcome to get a hold of me if you have any questions. Have a great day.